Welcome back to another episode of the Deadweight Podcast. I think it's going to be a good show today. I got a good friend, somebody who's become family to me over the last couple of years I've been here and in the cigar community with me. So I've been on break, and it's November, and I've been on break. I'm not supposed to be doing any recording until January, but I broke my rule because she was ready to record with me. So I had to say, you know what? Let me go ahead and do this recording. So here we go. What's going on, Jacki Madding?
Not much. Look, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
We both been on like low profile. You haven't been recording. I haven't been seen. Mm-hmm. Been keeping to myself for a minute.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's been a couple months since I've, it seemed like every Wednesday I seen you, and then go from like that until like not seeing you for a long time. And I miss you. I miss you and Corey, things like that. So when I get to see y'all, it's very good when I get to see y'all, things like that. So what's going on?
Just been kind of laying back and that taking care of self. Had disappeared for a while. You asked me how I'm doing. I'm thankful that I'm in this season, and just really had to take some time to focus on some things and find some peace. We're at the end of another wonderful year. A lot of things been going on, a little crazy here, a little crazy there, but it's November, season of Thanksgiving, and man, I'm just thankful to be here. How about you?
I'm very thankful to be here. I think this year, with my podcast, I do a lot of mental awareness, a lot of disability, because with disability, you see the physical and what I go through physically, but sometimes you won't see the mental side of what I get to go through. So I've been trying to get that going, and I see a therapist now and everything. So, and I was talking to you earlier, two things in my life that I really crave right now was peace and happiness.
Oh yeah.
And so sometimes you got to heal from some things. Sometimes you got to walk away from people. Sometimes whatever you got to do to achieve that, I'm all for it, and that's what I'm doing. So I think we on a couple journeys, and it's good to talk about those today.
Definitely on an interesting journey, and part of that for me is I walked away from my job this year because of my health, concerns about my physical health, as well as just needing to get in that right mental space. I spent 20 plus years working in retail banking, mortgage lending, 20, 21, 22 in mortgage lending with some crazy years. I walked away from that in 22 and transitioned into a role as a homeownership counselor and financial coach, and did that for the last 2 years, a little over 2 years. And it was time. It was time for me to shut it off and focus on my health, man. You don't realize, like when you're just go, you're on a hamster wheel, what you're doing to your health physically. You don't realize how much you lack taking care of your body, no matter what state you're in.
Sure.
And you don't realize the mental toll too. You start overlooking yourself. You put what you're feeling on pause and focus on trying to take care of everybody else and everything else, and it's bad. So in this season, I'm thankful that I'm on this journey. I'm looking for peace. You hadn't seen me because a lot of times I have to protect my peace. It's like, maybe I don't need to do the things that I've always been doing because I get the same result, the same feeling. Sure. So I've paused, and right now I'm just thankful, man. This has been a great year of discovery for self. I see a therapist. Therapy is good. Therapy is good. It's good for your mental health. I wish more people, especially in communities that have been, in disadvantage, would take the time to just talk about what you deal with. I don't know about you, but I look forward to my sessions with my therapist.
I do too. Right now, it's still new, and I haven't really did a lot. I think Thursday will probably be my 4th or 5th time seeing her.
Okay.
I'm my therapist, and I'm still new at it. I got a journal, and I started journaling. Yesterday was the first time actually journaling, and it was kind of weird for me because that is something out of my comfort zone.
Mm.
Um, so just to sit there, and I didn't really have any kind of, I didn't really sit there with a plan. I just want to, whatever's coming to my head, I want to write. And so, but my whole thing is I had to get started. So
Got to start somewhere.
yeah. So I just started talking, and I did it for about 10 minutes. It wasn't too much of anything, but I did it before I came up here to smoke. And but I was like, today I had to write in this journal before I do anything. Probably this house I got to write in the journal. So I put some music on and just got into a little zone where I could just write a couple thoughts down. And it's something about it that I haven't did that it takes something off of me a little bit. So I'm in for this therapy and this therapy movement of mine and healing from things that I didn't know I needed to heal from. And
Man, that's a word right there. That's a word.
so, but I like it's new for me. So, I'm trying to learn. And told you, biggest thing is to be happy in that peace. And if I still got some things I'm healing from, I ain't in that peace. So,
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for me.
And it's interesting. Thank you for sharing that with me because, that is also a part of healing is being able to open and talk about your truth.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't just go, hey, I'm in therapy. Let me wear it like a banner. I have learned, and I've been in therapy a couple of times in my life when I've been through some really tough things. But I don't know. This year I turned 48.
Mm-hmm.
I am on this, this road to 50. And Lord willing, I will have completely found that peace that I'm so seeking. But the one thing that is most important to me is being able to focus on what has hurt me
Mm-hmm.
and what's prevented me from being my best self. And therapy has taught me that a lot of it I struggle with is a result of my childhood traumas. And I thought I had the best upbringing in the world.
Yeah.
But apparently, again, in this season of Thanksgiving, I'm so thankful for that. I think back to growing up and I'm like, yeah, there's some stuff that I have suppressed and chosen not to think about. But today it's helpful in me finding that peace,
Sure. I like that. I think about things that have happened, not necessarily anybody's fault or be somebody's fault, it doesn't matter. But you went through it, and it's just like, how do I deal with this? When this, because there are a lot of things that I tucked in. Being in a wheelchair, I say there's a lot of situations where you kind of just have to tuck it away and keep going and keep moving. And so as a kid, I kind of, being in a wheelchair is like, I'm going to have a lot of these situations where I'm going to have to just suck it up and keep going. Because of the wheelchair. That's something I learned because of the wheelchair. Now it's not healthy, but it was just my coping mechanism to keep going and to try to be happy. Because I've always wanted to be happy, even as a little kid, and me still trying to find my way as somebody in a wheelchair, as a kid, identity. So it's like, sometimes events happen, it's like, all right, I don't like this, but let me tuck this away so I can move and put a smile on my face. And that's not very healthy. So sometimes the situations, these trauma things come out and they really make me feel some type of way, and I got to deal with it. But now I'm trying to get healthier coping mechanisms with it so I can deal with it the right way and not have to put it away and then 5 years later deal with the same thing again.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing. I've learned that even if you feel, if no one around you is aware of how you feel, or their lack of awareness makes you feel like you're you're not a priority,
mm-hmm.
then you got to make them aware. You got to say, hey, you know what? I feel this way when you don't make accommodation for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's not just limited to me saying it, but it has to be an action. Like I gotta make you aware,
Mhm.
and I need you to do something about it. You know what I'm saying? And I get that. I think a lot of how we've managed through life is the fact that we just cope with it. We just figure like, let me just tuck away how I feel,
Yeah.
so I don't make the next person feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate it though. I kind of hate
Kinda
that.
sucks. Really
I
sucks.
hate to feel like that because I put you put people's feelings over yours
Mhm.
until it just drives you nuts and you like you just start going off on people and be like, where'd that come from?
That's when it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
That's when it's unchecked.
Yeah.
And that's usually when you have issues, right?
Yes. So it's like if I deal with it now and I could let's have a conversation. It may be hard, but let's have a conversation.
And your feelings might get hurt.
Yeah.
And that's fine, because the same way I feel,
Mhm.
then you need to be aware, and maybe you'll start to feel something instead of just disregarding me.
Yeah.
Or make an accommodation. And I just think that's, I mean, it's so true for so many people that we find ourselves, you know, kind of hitting a point of regression. Like I'm just never going to be able to grow because I'm afraid to make someone else uncomfortable. But I am learning that my discomfort needs to walk in the room and everybody needs to feel it if they're causing my discomfort.
Yeah. For sure. Hey, being with y'all, because I know the first time I come here, you nicknamed me Quiet Storm.
For a reason.
I was very quiet. I think now I'm comfortable with y'all now and things like that, so I'm a little bit more. I still wouldn't say outspoken, but I speak. But you know, you got the red. You got people that love to like be confrontational, and I kind of like that. And it helps me to find my voice. I'm still not a confrontational person, but I'll let you know what's up.
You might not be confrontational, but somewhere inside my little soul, I feel like you're explosive like me. Like if it just goes too far, then it's bad for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Therapy's helping me through that.
For sure.
Therapy's helping me learn to not be reactive, but be proactive and just say, hey, this isn't making me feel good.
I think I think boundaries, not my boundaries towards other people, but boundaries toward people towards me. In a sense, like sometimes people call me, I won't answer the phone because you feel like.
Did you see me just look at my watch like, nah, I don't have energy for that today.
Yeah, so it's just like.
I call them back, but I don't have energy right now for that.
Like even I got a phone call before we did this, and I was like, I actually ignored it, but I was like, let me call because that person doesn't necessarily call me like that. So I was like, let me make sure everything is fine. But for people that call me and want to call me 8:30 in the morning or 11:30 o'clock at nighttime, and just boundaries. Like, you need to give me them boundaries. Like, I would do that to you. Do that to me.
So can I revisit what you just said though? And I promise you we'll like get deeper in some stuff. But I just want to go back to something that you said just now. They call you like that, so you figure, let me just go ahead and answer and see what's up. Was it an emergent, urgent something?
No.
So here's my take on that. Something that I know I do. Not saying you have to do this, but this is something that I do that kind of helps me formulate my own boundaries with folks. Nah, I ain't got energy for that right now. Because if it's an emergency, they're going to call 911. They're not going to call me.
Yeah.
Unless it's one of my children.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if they call me, I'm more likely to answer one of my sons than I am. I mean, quite frankly, outside of Corey, my husband, mom, sister, I mean, I'm going to be like, eh. And even sometimes with them, I'm just like, right now, if it's an emergency, they will call back immediately. But sometimes I have to say no to remind myself that I have the power to say no, because otherwise I'm going to keep giving in. Yeah. You know, and I don't know.
Nah, that makes perfect sense.
But I'm thankful.
And usually, I try to be like that, but just to make sure everything was all right, I just put in that situation. I go up. I guess I was whatever. Uh, but yeah, that makes sense a lot. And um, so
I sometimes feel like I'm not seen. And then I'm only seen when someone needs something. So that's been part of my work. Like, you don't even notice me in this room until you need or want something from me.
for
Do you
sure,
feel that way?
for sure. Um, I don't. I don't know if it for the same reasoning, but I do feel unseen. So that's a, I would say, complicated question. Um, because I feel like sometimes I am unseen because of my own choices. Because I'd rather sit in the back and I sit in the corner by myself and not fool with anybody, but just I want to be at the party, but not really in the party sometimes. Um, so I think a lot of times that's me being feeling unseen because of my own fault. And then, or I get easy blaming on the wheelchair. Oh, because I'm in a wheelchair, people won't take me serious or anything like that. It's like, and that's another reason. That's another thing I had to kind of get over. Not using the wheelchair as an excuse of if something bad happens, oh, it's just because of the wheelchair, or because of my self-limiting beliefs. I had to get to that.
Yeah.
Why this? Why can I try to go out for this? Because I'm in a wheelchair. They're never gonna go for that. What about this? Because the wheelchair.
Yeah.
And it's just like once I got over that in my head, it's like, nah, I'm a cool dude. Like people rock with you. You got it. Let's go ahead and just do it. You just get out your comfort zone. That's what I had to learn how to do. Just get out of my comfort zone. And once I started getting out of my comfort zone, it started really helping me out. I don't really feel too quiet now. And I was going from the nickname Quiet Storm. I don't feel too quiet now. I'm just a storm.
You're still quiet storming my phone.
Yeah.
I get that. So like I grew up, my grandmother was like my shield. Big Mama was everything. Like my mom, so my mother she was in a relationship with my dad, and they had their issues, So like they did what they did, kind of did. They product of the 70s. So my parents were the people that pretty much partied.
Mm-hmm.
They went out on the weekends, discos. I say this, and I can say this on a podcast because I've told my mother to her face. I've not had the opportunity to tell my dad because he is all but vanished from the face of the earth. But I've told my mom to her face, y'all smoked weed when I was a kid. I wonder why y'all were burning trees in the room. I would smell it coming under the door. Like, why are they burning trees in the room? She's smoking weed.
Mm-hmm.
They were just living. And I won't say that I had an older brother. I won't say that we were inconvenienced, but it wasn't necessarily convenient that they had kids. So my grandmother became my saving grace. And my mom worked, she worked in a factory making men's shirts in small town in Georgia, and that's what they did. I learned early on what it meant to be invisible. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a disability. I wasn't, in a wheelchair. I didn't have learning disabilities or any of those things. So my thing was I was just invisible because they were living their lives. And my grandmother was a one person. She helped me realize that sometimes being in the shadows was the best vantage point to be in. Mm-hmm. She was one of those women who did so much for so many people in the community, expected nothing in return. She didn't like the limelight unless it was her birthday, which, interesting story. My grandmother, I believe her date of birth was February 13th, 1913. But somewhere in there, she changed it to February 14th because she wanted to be special. That's what my family kind of believes. I believe that to be true. But outside of that, my grandmother didn't expect anything in return. And she was very much a quiet storm because she would do and give and just be such a solid support for so many people in our family, in our community. I think everyone leaned on her for so many reasons. But she didn't really expect anything in return unless it was her birthday, which she made Valentine's Day or Mother's Day, and she would sit and read her cards to everybody. Or, you know, holidays, Easter, she would cook. But she always invited people in. But my grandmother made me realize early on that vantage point of kind of just being in the background was always the best. So I've grown up very comfortable being a silent support. You need me, I am here. You know, if you call on me, it's very likely that I'm going to do what I'm going to do. But also, like my grandmother, if I absolutely unequivocally was done, you would not be able to squeeze blood out of a turnip. When Big Mama was done, don't come to her. Yeah. Because it was a wrap. So I learned then just to be quiet, be in the shadows, do what you can for people. Expect them to do nothing in return. Because if you rely on people, they don't let you down. Yeah. But just quietly do your part. That was always my thing.
I feel that. So, talking about being unheard of, I want to stay on topic, but like in unseen, and being a kid and growing up in that era of like, stay in child's place, like you seen and not heard. That's very kind of traumatizing as a kid.
I think my mom and my dad traumatized me with that because as a kid I couldn't ask them, are y'all in there burning trees? I just had to accept the fact that it must have been trees burning in the room. And I was an adult before I could say, he was in there smoking weed. They were doing drugs with me in the house. Stay in a child's place. She didn't listen to adults' conversations. Yeah. My mom, they did this thing where they would spell stuff. Like they'd be talking about somebody, they'd spell it out. Man, they had no idea they made me a top speller. Like they were like preparing me for academia, but like spelling out stuff. Spell out, you know, so and so. They'd be like, oh yeah, you know, Luke came up in here, and it's like, Luke. I felt like Celie and Nettie on The Color Purple. I sounded out stuff, so I learned how to spell. But it was oppressive because we learned to stay in a child's place, right? I think it messed me up as a young kid. It messed me up for adulthood.
I think so. I think it may have messed me up in a sense. And I'm the oldest too, so it's just like I kind of follow the rules. I don't know. I just stay in child's place. If you want me to ask questions, I won't ask questions. If that's you. So now, as an adult, I don't feel like I have a curious mind a lot sometimes. Like, you may tell me something, and okay, cool. I'll just be like that. Like, it's not that I believe you or not believe you, but it's just I'm not going to continue to ask questions about it if I feel weird about it, or even if I agree with you, I'm just going to let it be because maybe I don't care that much, or it's just like I'm conditioned not to ask questions.
Yeah, I can see that because it made me angry a lot of times because I wanted to understand, and I didn't realize as a young adult how much what was going on behind the scenes made me feel. And I mean, I'll take it a step further. I know why I feel the way I do about both my parents today, more so now at 48 years old than at 28 years old. I know now why I feel the way I do about them. And it all goes back to my childhood and how I was treated. Not that they treated me bad, but just the fact that I couldn't be a curious child. I couldn't ask questions because I would be out of place. But then it also goes back to my grandmother teaching me how to stay steadily aware from the background.
And I've learned how to be that background. I wouldn't say I'm a background character because I can be the main character, but I prefer to be the background character. I pick my times where I'm the main character, but for the most part, you'll see me in the back somewhere in the corner, just chilling.
Yeah.
Because I could probably tell you a lot about anybody coming to the cigar lounge without even talking to them, just watching them how they move and what they do. I could probably tell you a little bit about them just by doing that.
My character flaw, and this is a moment of vulnerability, is that I learned to fake it till you make it. So a lot of times, and I don't mean this about anybody in this circle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean it at all about my cigar family. But there are instances and situations I've been in my life, both personally and professionally, where I was just all smiles and really engaged and just so happy to help. And then it's like the moment I turn my back, I'm like, man, I can't stand them. I don't like their ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like what they said. I don't like what they did. But here's the part that gets me. Until recently, I've never been one to confront it. Hey, this is how I feel. This is how I'm made to feel when you say these things in my presence.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of messed up, that here I am at this age, I'm finally there. But I think about all the interactions that I've had that I've just walked away and felt so broken and hurt because of me not having the ability to say at that time how I felt about how I was being treated and just retreating to being in the shadows.
I definitely get that, like I said. And I always come back to saying I'm the lack of my being confrontational. But now I deal with people, I don't feel like it's confrontational. It goes back to being healthy and guarding your peace in a healthy way.
It's hard to say those things to people that you really love.
Mm-hmm.
I've recently had a hard conversation with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
She said something to me. And for the first time in my life, I was a voice for myself without any regard to the discomfort that I knew the conversation would bring. And I simply turned to her and said, why would you say that? How could you say that to me? I know it made her uncomfortable. I'm sure deep down inside, she probably wanted to have a moment so she could reflect and maybe even shed a tear because it was the first time. And again, I'm 48 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you have no right to say that to me because it's not true.
Yeah.
That's what you want to believe, but it's not true.
For sure.
Man, that took a lot for me to just say that out loud to you, so you can imagine how hard it was for me to say it to my mom in the respectful way. She's still my mother. I love her regardless. But I just think that what we experience, especially in our childhood, truly shapes us as adults.
It really does.
And through constant work and awareness therapy,
mm-hmm.
we learn how to cope. And I use the word accommodation because I know it applies to the Americans with Disabilities Act. But I think it also applies to those of us who are neurodivergent, who struggle as adults with things like ADHD, ADD. I think some of what I've experienced in my struggles with those things, especially ADHD, is because I wasn't able to cope as a kid. I didn't know how to deal, but now as an adult, I too need accommodation.
For sure. And that's why, even with disability, I talk about disability and things like that. I'm like, I go through the same thing. We all go through the same things. Whether you're in a wheelchair or you got a disability or not, we all go through the same thing. So that's why I think I like my podcast, because I think you don't have to be in a wheelchair to relate to a lot of these things. Because a lot of situations, I feel the exact same way as you, just a different reason why. So it's just like, I like to have my podcast and I want people to relate to it. And I forget the point I was going to say, so I'm about to move on. Sometimes I blabber, I talk too much, but we all need to be accommodated pretty much we all need to be complimented. You need to feel seen. And in my life, I tried to make people feel seen. I was on a leadership podcast one time. Was asking how to deal with people. I was like, first, I'm a listen. Whoever's talking to me, I'm trying to listen to them, make them feel heard. People just want to be heard and seen and feel made to feel important.
To feel accepted.
Yeah.
To feel safe. Like, am I safe enough to say to you how I really feel? And you be accepting and make some reasonable accommodation.
Yeah. So, but I was going to say about having hard conversations, especially with family, and I think about those kind of hard conversations I might have to have with maybe my mom or my brother, something like that. And from past experiences or whatever, and how those things would go. It's just like I hope they would go well, but or vice versa. Like my brother called me like, "Bro, I remember something you did to me when you were 13." And if vice versa, it's not just about me, but vice versa. Like him calling me up and saying that you hurt my feelings or something like that, and I gotta say, wow, I didn't know that. And have to apologize, but actually be genuine in my apology. Because at the end of the day, I love my brother. I know I love my mama. So, and I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings or vice versa. But
yeah,
just those hard conversations that we may have to have. But afterwards, though, how did you feel afterwards when you had that hard conversation with your mom?
I think she's fine. I think I'm fine.
Did you feel like a burden? Was it a burden in the time, or just like something I got? Because sometimes, like when I say something to people now, it's like I may let stuff slide, but certain things, when I talk to somebody about something, it's like I can't let this go. Like I have to say something.
Well, look, I think it's one of those things. Like if I can indulge you here for a moment, my growing up again, my grandmother was really a stable force in my development, into a young woman. My parents, I honestly, I don't know, at least 20 something when I started having a real conversation with my mom about her relationship with my dad. And I realized then it was way more complicated than I ever imagined. It was so complicated that it was going to take years for me to just kind of like unpack what she told me in a few sentences. The weird thing on the other side of that is I've never had that conversation with my dad about his take on my relationship with my mom. So a little backstory, like grew up in a small town. My dad's family, was there in Alabama and some further down folks. My grandmother on my father's side, my paternal grandmother, went to Michigan. And I understand the reason being is kind of get away from Jim Crow South. So she moved north to Detroit, found a life there. My dad back and forth in Detroit area. And I think with my dad, from what I've put together bits and pieces, and I will say this, I hope that at some point someone in my dad's family, they'll be able to see this podcast and hear this part of it so they can help me better understand the interesting, debacle that is my paternal side of family. I think my dad was kind of like the black sheep in his family. I think he always has been. My grandmother she probably brings some understanding that she's in her 90s now. I don't know that I'll ever get to have that conversation with her because even our relationship is I'll see her every so many years, but it's just we're not connected. Something that I'd like to resolve before I, close my eyes in this earth. But I don't know how long they'll all be around to do it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I think a lot of that started with my dad and the way he was as a young man into a young adult, into a man in a relationship with a woman, my mother, and how rearing me, because my brother and I don't have the same father, but rearing me as their child was difficult because of the the upbringing they had. I know for a fact my mom was the youngest of her siblings. Mm-hmm. And from what I've always gathered, she was the exceptional child. Like my grandfather saw no wrong in her. She just was always here.
Yeah.
I can see how that would be a problem because early on in this conversation did not say that it wasn't always convenient to have a kid.
Yeah.
I don't think they didn't love me, but the convenience of being young parents was tough. Now, I think if I could understand a little bit of that more, I'd understand how I fit into the person that I've become.
Yeah.
If I could take some of what I think to be my dad's story and pull it into present day, dissect that with my mom's story, then I think I would have a better understanding of how I became as an individual in relation to them. Also, how that formed with my grandmother, keeping me, kind of focused on having that vantage point from, I'm back here. I'll do what I can to help. It's okay if you run over me sometimes or say things that I don't agree with, and I'm just going to kind of retreat. I think all of that would help me in understanding who I am. And maybe I would understand my need for accommodation more as an adult and be able to voice that. I know there's a long way to kind of bring it full circle, but does it help you? I mean, did you grow up with both of your parents in the home, and can you see how that shaped you?
And I was about to, comment on that because you talked about your brother, your brother not having the same father. So I'm the oldest of 5, really. But for years it was just me and my brother Devin. Now we had different dads. I call his dad my dad because that's who I grew up with. That was the first man I knew, and that's called my dad. But I have a biological father.
Okay.
And we live in Tennessee. He lives in Tennessee. I'm 39. I'll be 39 in April, and I've never met the man in my life.
Holy moly. I want to cuss on your podcast.
Go ahead and cuss on him. You
Damn.
cuss on him.
Have you ever talked to him?
I've talked to him on the phone and things like that, but it's, and I had a conversation with him, and I asked him what happened, and I told him. So my issue in not talking to him or not wanting anything to do with him, it has nothing to do with me being mad. That Jay-Z song was like, hey, it wasn't your fault, you just got caught. That's kind of how it was for me. It's like, hey, it is what it is. I'm a man now, so it's like, I didn't need you growing up because I already called somebody father. I already called somebody dad that spoke into my life. You know what I'm saying? So I never actually needed him, but there's always been this nagging thing at me to like know my history.
Yeah.
And just like I battle that on a regular basis. Like, who's my family? Like, I got a whole family in Tennessee that I don't know. And majority of the time I don't really care, to be quite honest with you.
But is that a coping mechanism? Have you conditioned yourself to not care? Because if you do, you might get hurt.
No.
Okay.
So
that's cool.
Okay. So the problem is that I always felt like that. And me and my brother was on the phone one night, and he's like, bro, why don't you just talk to him? Just give me a chance to talk to him. And I'm like, no, I don't know. I don't really want to. I don't care. And so, he kept nagging me about it. So eventually, I did. And matter of fact, it's funny because he started calling me. And so, we get on the phone, not talk. He told me his side of the story. Cool. I ain't mad at you. As a man, I'm a man now. So as a man, I'm like, I ain't mad at you. It is what it is. And I tried to do the whole, call and talk and things like that. But there's something that never clicked in me that really felt anything for him or wanted to pursue a relationship as a father and son.
Yeah. Like
that. So it's like, at one time, it probably could have been a coping mechanism.
This is good. I gotta get some popcorn.
But it's just like, I don't really see it. Never clicked in my mind. It never clicked to call. When he would call my phone, I was like, why are you calling me? It just never happened. So it's like, I don't have any feelings in that. Like, maybe I'm cold-hearted in that moment, but like, I tell myself to be that way because I don't really feel. It's no hatred. I don't hate the man. I don't dislike him. It's just I like I said, I like my life. I'm happy and at peace.
Don't need a disruption.
Yeah. So.
So mine's similar but different in the fact that my parents split up. So common law in Georgia, they were married because they common law. You lived together. You were common law marriage.
Mm-hmm.
When my dad went back to Detroit.
My family's actually from Detroit. I think we talked about this before.
Yeah. My dad went back to Detroit. As a kid, my mom, talk about this convenience thing again. Oh, she packed me up and I go to Detroit for summers and spend time with my dad. Best thing in the world. I am actually very thankful my mom did that because it gave me a chance to interact with those people that, didn't live in the South. Like, I'm thinking about the kids that grew up like in the neighborhood my dad lived with. My dad had this amazing home on Archdale in Detroit. I think it's off the Lodge Freeway. Last time I was there, 2011, we actually drove down that street and I looked at the old house, but I didn't see my dad. So I would go up there and spend time with my dad. He eventually did actually marry someone, married a really wonderful woman from Arkansas, and they had a daughter, my sister, Morgan, who, if you've met my sis, I absolutely love me some Morgan. That's my girl. So I have a brother who has got a different dad, and I have a sister, and we shared the same dad, different moms. But it's all relative, we're all whatever. But my dad was in my life for a greater portion. After my sister was born, I still would get to spend time there. But my dad, unfortunately, has always had his vices. He was, from what my mother's told me, used drugs. And, well, again, they smoked weed with me in the house. So they did drugs actively when I was a kid. But and I think his went a bit further. I think it was like heroin and whatever else. So I had a really great relationship with my father. When I would spend time with him, I got to go up one year at Christmas and spend time. So I do remember my cousins Lim, Sabrina, just being up in the summertime, my sister Morgan, my grandma, being able to be around them, my aunties, uncles. I felt loved and cared for. And I don't know what happened to my dad. Somewhere in that he lost his mind again. He lost his ever-loving mind again and went back to drug use. And some of the same shit that he did with my mom when they were married was some of the same shit he ended up doing to my sister's mom. And she ended up, splitting up, divorcing him. And then he just took full-time, thing with drugs. So the last time I actually laid eyes on my father was 1991 when we were there for a family reunion. And I got to see him. The last time I talked to my dad and had a full-fledged conversation with him was in 1995 when I was preparing to graduate from high school. And that conversation was me calling and pleading with him to come to my graduation, saying that I would send him money if he would just come. And I remember my sister's mom, my stepmom, saying to me, don't send him any money because he's not going to come. It's just going to blow it, And then, 18 years old, I didn't understand. But I haven't had a conversation with my dad since I was 18. Haven't seen him since 1991 when I was like 14. I don't know him.
Yeah.
So my sister got married. Fast forward, she and I split for some years. We didn't talk to each other. She was graduating high school. The next time that I saw her in the early 2000s, and we reconnected, and we've stayed connected since then. We feel like we're it. As far as we know, we're all we have. My dad probably has some kids somewhere else. I remember one time someone walking in the back and saying, you look like somebody. It's like, what's your name? And I was like, well, my maiden name is this. And he was like, man, you look just like this girl, and that's her last name is the same as yours. I'm like, okay, maybe you do got some kids somewhere in Florida.
Funny story. So, I'm a Jones.
Yeah. Very common name.
Yeah. And obviously I told you my biological father was in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So any black girls with last name Jones, I automatically don't talk to them.
Because
Hmm?
because
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just like that was like even I went to school. I came to Lee University in 2009, and I was like, yeah, if I meet any girl, black girl, especially black girl, last name Jones, like I will never be romantically. I will not look at them romantically because yeah, that may go south really fast.
well, I think it's tough that we be in a situation like that, like because we don't know. And here's the thing, like I'm not mad at my father. I just want to understand like what made you do what you did. And here's something that I find even more challenging. I have three sons. My sister has three daughters. My dad has never met any of his grandchildren.
Wow.
My oldest child will be 25 in a few months, in a couple of months. My dad's never met any of his grandchildren. My dad's mother met my children for the first time when my dad's sister, who lives 15 minutes away from the small town I grew up in Georgia, when her husband died. And I said, I'm going to take my children. They're going to meet their grandmother. I don't know. That was in 2015, almost 10 years ago. I don't know what the hell I was thinking would come of it. But I was like, I just need them to know that I had a dad, and I have a grandma on that side and things. And then as I kept raising, those guys, Corey and I kept raising them, and Corey and I, we've had these conversations. Corey doesn't have the best relationship with all of his siblings. His dad, he doesn't. I'll let him come on your podcast and talk about his way, his upbringing. But we've talked about it, and I realize it's not about being angry. But again, kind of goes back to the point of all this. I'm very thankful for where I am, who I am, and how my life has played out. But at this age, I crave answers, and I crave the ability to get to be heard and understood and understand myself. And I want to be accommodated, even if it means for time that I can't get back. I need people to understand who I am, why I think the way I do, why I move the way I do, why I draw the line in the sand and say, you will not do this to me the way I do. Because at the end of the day, honestly, Luke, it all matters. It's who we are. And even more so than that, I know you don't have children, but what will be my legacy? And you have to ask yourself, whether you have children or not, what legacy will I leave when I walk away from here, from the person I became and how I lived from that moment that I was born to the moment I died.
I definitely understand that. And I try to, it's cliche or whatever like that, but also I like to make an impact in people's lives. I work at Walmart here in Cleveland, Tennessee, and I've been going from Walmart for about 4 or 5 years almost now. People still see me there, ask me when I'm coming back. We miss you here. This and that. That makes me feel good because I made an impact in somebody's life. Like, talk about just smiling at somebody. Hey, how you doing today? Just speaking. Because I don't feel seen, a lot of people like that. So when you even speak to somebody sometimes, wait a minute, it's the first time somebody even spoke to me today. I know I'm at Walmart. He does his job, but, I try to make it seem like I see you.
Yeah.
Because we all felt unseen at one time or another in life.
Absolutely.
And so it's just like, and you know how bad it feels not to be seen. So like, why would I want somebody else to feel that way? The way I felt, why would I want somebody to feel that way? So like I try to like interact with people the way I want them to interact with me. In the sense of like, yeah, I want to be seen. Like, hear me, let's have a conversation, enjoy yourselves, and just show love. And that's my biggest thing. Just show love.
Love and respect.
Yeah.
Respect me for who I am and
Mm-hmm.
my life experiences. We were just talking up front, man, and before we came back here, and it's like I was saying to Paul and to you. Right now, in the state of the world, everybody's so frustrated for so many various reasons, and at the end of the day, I think it's all that we all need to be heard. Like, I'm here. I have a story to tell. And to your point about people, all those years I worked in banking, there's so many people that I've met, I've worked with, I've worked, in some interesting spaces, worked with some amazing people, done some really cool things in my life. I've traveled, throughout the world. I mean, honestly, my dad was crazy, and I don't understand how we lost contact, but one thing I can say, my first experience going out of the country was with him.
Okay.
You never know a person's story
Mm-hmm.
until you take time to ask them, tell me your story.
For sure.
And I'm so thankful, that we met.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I kind of feel like the moment that we met and the first time we sat and had a conversation, I was like, he all right, There's a story inside Quiet Storm.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, I find myself telling y'all every time I see you, man, I love you. Take care. I'll see you next time. Love you. Great to see you. Because we don't know.
Yeah. That's still a hard, well, I won't say it's a hard thing, but I'm a lot better with it now with people saying that they love me and me saying, I love you too. And that's outside of family. It was a very weird thing for me to do. But now, when people do it to me, it's pretty much automatic. So like a stranger could probably come up to me, hey man, I love you. I'm like, I love you too. I'm like, damn, because I'm trying to condition myself to do that and say I love you and show. I'm not very good with showing my emotions.
Nor am I good at accepting it always. Sometimes if someone says they love me, I'm like, I need to be able to accept that they feel that way. It could be that they love me for the fact that I heard. Mm-hmm. Being a counselor, talking to people about their money, mm-hmm. in what I did in banking and post-banking career, you learn that people, again, we all interact, react because of a lot of how we were brought up in our childhood. And it's interesting you say that. When someone says they love me, I always be like, okay. But now I'm like, yeah, I get it, because maybe they've never heard it. Said a few days ago to my husband, I said, man, I just am trying to remember all the times in my life, because it was so few that my mom just said, I love you. Mm-hmm. She's not a bad person. And I know she loves me, but it's not been something she could vocalize. Mm-hmm. She might do something for you. But it was always one of those things where I was like, man. And then I realized I don't remember all the times my dad said it. And I think that made it hard for me to accept love when it came in different forms. But again, that's part of me learning not only what I need, but accepting how I feel and even accommodating myself with the fact that it's okay to question what somebody said about you. But my family here, my OCL family, my smoke family, it's real. I mean, I do love and care about every last one of you. And we may not always agree on all the things, but one thing I can agree on is that in this season of Thanksgiving, there are people that have come into our lives that have made us better, and I think you are definitely one of them.
Appreciate that. Y'all are definitely in my life.
You made my life better just knowing you and being able to tell you how much I love you and appreciate you, because you bring the quiet storm.
Yeah. Well, I love you guys too. I mean, y'all are a big part, and I talk about you guys and things like that, and I would like my family to come down here, hang out, and get to see. I would love for my family I got to choose to meet the family, to meet my family. I think it'd be cool, and that and just see a little bit, to know a little bit more about me, because I'm sure, they answer questions. Y'all got questions, and they're gonna ask y'all questions about me because y'all get to see a side of me that they don't get to see.
I ain't giving up them secrets. What you talking about? What's understood ain't got to be explained.
Right. My brother, his family came down. Well, my sister-in-law's from Louisiana, so they live in DC now. So now they're able to, when they drive down, they're able to come through Chattanooga, Cleveland. So he called me up one Saturday night. He's like, "Hey, we about to come hit you up tomorrow." I'm like, "What you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, we in Louisiana. So tomorrow we leaving and we're gonna stop by, go get something to eat, and then get back on the road." And that was great for me because I was missing my family. I got nephew. He turned 14 on Halloween, and I got a 6-year-old nephew. His birthday's, I believe, in August. So they growing up. I remember my brother called and told me that my about my nephew DJ. He's like, "Hey, he about to be a nephew. He about to be an uncle," and I'm like, "That's what's up." I was now he's 14 years old.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I don't have any kids of my own. Maybe one day, I don't know. Regardless of what happens, I can't tell the future. But in all that, I have peace about everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, before we get off, I know I don't want to hold you up too much. Before we get off, and I'm definitely gonna have you back on a couple more times because it's easy to talk to you. But I think, with your childhood and everything, and stepping into motherhood, can you talk a little bit about motherhood and how that affected you, your childhood?
Yeah, I think again, as I get older, I understand things better, and I think kind of what we've talked about with the way we were brought up, it definitely has an impact on how you parent as a mom. I think I've not known what to do more times than I knew what. And I married very young. I married my children's father when I was 21, 22. 'Cause 21 I was still buck wild, but 22 I married my kid's dad, and he and I dated in high school, and he went off to college, I went off to college. I came home a little sooner than he did, and we started back seeing one another, dating, and we decided to get married, and we had been married 6 months, and I found out that I was expecting my first son, and I was very young, didn't know what to do. I relied on my maternal side, my mom.
Mm-hmm.
I relied on my aunties, the teachings from my grandma. And I don't know that I always did everything well. And I think a lot of what we experienced as children growing up and watching our parents interact, or the lack thereof, shapes us, because my relationship with my first husband, my kid's dad, did not last.
Mm-hmm.
I literally was, pregnant with our third son, and I knew our marriage was still falling apart. But, I powered through and fought, and we still ended up getting divorced. And when our divorce was final, my thing was, okay, I have 3 sons. I had custody of them. I shared custody with him, but I was, their home base for custody, and I shared with him. And you have a 2-year-old son that you're trying to explain that you'll see dad every other weekend. Man, that shit was traumatic for him. It was traumatic for me. I still can remember my son at times like screaming murder because he did not want to go and spend the weekend with his dad. He wanted to stay home, and me having to fight through the tears and say, well, you've got to go, buddy. And then, trying to not let them see me cry, but, closing the door, them leaving. Not that their dad was doing anything nefarious to him. He did the best he could with what he had, as did I. But man, if I could go back to those times and think clearer and be a better person, but I learned so much about parenting from the example that I had. And I think a lot of times, we were talking earlier about how you just You let people do whatever, say whatever, even if it makes you uncomfortable. You just accept it. I think I did a lot of that. Um, and then I decided, I'm raising 3 young black men who need to go in the world and be stronger. I gotta be better.
Mhm.
And again, this is vulnerability for me because I don't really talk about this, but I learned that I could not teach them how to be a man.
Yeah, for sure.
That was hard. That
Yeah.
was because I wanted to protect them, wanted to be mom and hold them, but I learned I could not, in all the things motherhood that I could do, I couldn't teach them how to be men, and that was the hardest.
I'm glad you brought that up. And,
That was the hardest.
because I see on Facebook, and it kind of irritates me, but I get it. You know, it is hard for a lady, a mom, to teach him how to be a man because you're not a man. you know,
That's tough.
it is. I go on Facebook and I see single moms do that, and I get it, but it irritates me because it's like I don't care what you're doing. You can't teach a boy how to be a man when you're not a man. And it's not none of that. I love my ladies, and I think y'all do a good job. Single moms do a good job of raising, but it's some things you just can't teach.
Well, I mean, I get what you're saying. Like around Father's Day, you see women say, I'm doing the best, and I mean, I am not going to be critical because I get it, and from the standpoint of having been more or less abandoned by my father, it's a harsh word to use, but that's how I feel. He can explain maybe one day before time's up. That might not be the case, but the abandonment that I felt, had I not had the support of my uncles and men in my family, and then eventually Corey on my side, I'm not, discounting my ex-husband's brothers and his father, which his father and mother are still very wonderful people. And I love them and care for them. And they did the best they could to support. If I didn't have who I had in my corner, I worry what would have happened. But I will tell you, I am so thankful, so blessed, so grateful, so fortunate to have 3 of the most wonderful young men. My sons are now, my oldest 24, middle 23, youngest 18, soon to be 19 here next month. The most respectful, honorable young men.
They are.
And I mean, I get emotional thinking about it. I couldn't have done it without my tribe. I mean, even the men in this circle here that are, my smoke family that have even poured into them. You, Durant, Mike, AJ, Sean, Jason, all of these guys, Chuckaboo. I mean, the owners of this fine establishment have encouraged them. Men who can give men positivity and power. I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't do it on my own. But I ultimately give props to my husband, Corey. We've been married now. It'll be going on, we'll be at 15 years here in a minute. Corey's been a great part of their lives. I've been married to Corey long. I was married to their dad. And he has been a driving force in teaching them how to be honorable, respectful, responsible young black men.
And
I couldn't have done it.
Young black men.
I couldn't have done it. There was nothing I could do. But I understand the heart of those women who had no one. And my heart breaks for them when they had no choice. It's an old saying that you don't know how strong you are until that's the only choice you have. And I think a lot of women, and from my perspective as a black woman, that's what my mom had to do. My dad left. My brother didn't have, everything with his father. And then my brother ended up in prison for a number of years. And I think a lot of that probably has a lot to do with what he lacked with his relationship, and my mom trying to raise the best she could.
And I think in my life, even when my mom divorced, you know, I don't have the strongest relationship with my mom's husband now. Even as a kid, and there's no, I don't have the best relationship with him. And then my brother's, father, which I call dad, he's always been in my life, but like, there's times we didn't see him growing up a lot too. I think me and my brother, we've always did a good job because we always had somebody in our life that was a male figure.
Yeah.
And we always listened. See, one thing I don't like about kids nowadays sometimes, and I'm not being that grumpy old dude who say that, but like sometimes they think they know everything and don't want to listen to the elders that's been there before. So it's like, even when I worked at Walmart, living in Maryland and here, sometimes old people sit next to me. I love it because they would just talk. And I would just like take in everything they had to say, and especially when they was giving knowledge. It was like, if somebody's giving you free knowledge, you gotta take that. And I always did that. Like, I'm gonna take in knowledge. Somebody's talking to me about something, experience that they experienced already, and I have a chance to avoid the same issue, we'll do it. So I think me and my brothers always did a good job of having older people in our lives.
Yeah.
And listening to their advice and things like that. So I think that was different. So in a sense, I think my mom did luck up with that. But we were good kids too. You can talk about your kids. And me and my brother, we were good kids. We didn't get in trouble. We weren't out in trouble, getting in trouble with the law, things like that. Yeah, we were kids. We got in trouble like that, but we were good kids. So
yeah.
And I knew I wasn't getting in trouble with the law because being in a wheelchair. All they like, there was a black boy in a wheelchair over there. Yeah. I learned from a young age. I was like, life of crime could not be for me because I'm going to jail because I can't get away with that.
Yeah. And I mean, even now, I still be like, I don't want to go to jail, even at my age. That's why I have to be in therapy.
Yeah,
work
for
through
sure.
some of the things. But I mean, I it's important. Like in my family, on my maternal side, again, my dad's family is just, it's been so much distance. But on my maternal side, like my grandmother raised all these kids. Then they all had kids. I got like 21, 22 first cousins, 22 of us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oldest first cousins are like 60s, all the way down to me and my one younger cousin are on the shorter end there, and we're in our like late 40s, and there's a lot of boys in between there. I mean, and I even have a cousin whose mom died when he was very young. Mm-hmm. He is my first favorite Corey. My husband Corey is the second, and when they're in the same room, it's always the battle of the Corey.
I heard that.
My cousin Corey, he grew up without his mom, and his children not having his father in his life, all he had was my uncles. Mm-hmm. My Uncle James, my Uncle Pot, whose name was Ralph. His nickname was Partner, and they called him Pot. I still won't get that. I still don't understand it. But my Uncle Pot, Uncle James, Uncle John, Uncle Nathaniel, my aunt's husband, all the men that poured into him, my Uncle Joseph, countless men in our community. So the thing that I can tell you most is, even though I knew I couldn't raise my sons to be men, I couldn't raise them to be black men. Even if I had not married a second time and married this wonderful man that I'm married to now, Corey, even if I hadn't married their father, and just ended up with sons, let's just say I just had sons and didn't marry their father, I still attribute every man who's ever, spent more than a minute talking to my guys as being a part of their upbringing. Mm-hmm. And that sense of community was something that was instilled in me at a very young age, even though my mom was smoking weed. I won't let her live that down. There was a community of men that just supported each other on my maternal side. And that's why I love my family now. I love when we get together. We'll be together in a couple of weeks for my uncle's 80th birthday, and we were together a couple of years ago for my other uncle's 80th birthday. We all went to the beach and spent time there. I keep reminding myself that even in the midst of hurt, heartache, loss, not knowing what to do, as a mom, I always had a tribe around me, even though I couldn't rely on my own dad. I never let it stop me from trying to be the best version of a mom of a mother that I could be. And
that's good.
I'm proud of my sons. Although I don't know if they'll ever get married or be in committed relationships. I've made it so clear to them that it is important that they be themselves, live out all your dreams. I even say, if one of you decides to get in a relationship, a long-term commitment, don't feel like you just got to get married to find happiness. I've had to talk. If one of you decided you wanted to be in a same sex relationship, I'll support you because I love you because you're mine. That's the best advice I can give as a mother, is to just be willing to love and accept our children. I mean, it's an amazing thing to be able to give birth to someone, feel them growing inside of you, bring them into the world and send them on the way. And for women who were never able to carry their own children, but they adopted, or because someone in the family had a child and couldn't take care of it, they took on the responsibility in fostering and adopting. Even if they didn't pass through your body and you had something to do with their rearing and their upbringing, it is something to be celebrated. You have the power of being an uncle. That's a pretty amazing thing, because as an uncle, you'll be able to have an impact on your nephews' lives as they grow up. You'll be able to formulate some sort of interest in their lives from a perspective that even their own father or mother can't give them. They sometimes don't even give each other as siblings. So you'll be able to give them something. So there's power in being in that orbit and still being a part of a great thing.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that and being part of it more, and calling me up and talking and me giving them advice and things like that.
Calling you Uncle Luke.
Yeah, Uncle Luke. Yeah, my little nephew, 6 years old. He's like, my boy, he's quiet, kind of more like me a little bit, but the youngest one, Uncle Luke, and he had me down laughing. And that little dude. I miss him. He's trying to play soccer.
Oh man.
And I talked to my brother the other day, and
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's a cutie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like he can get into some stuff too.
Yeah.
Like that little dude look like he got 1,000 questions.
For sure. Yeah. So
he get to a conversation with you and ask 1,001 questions.
So he said that Uncle Luke. And I like, because I don't get to hear that often. So I don't really mind when he talking my head off and things like that.
Oh, you love it.
Yeah. I don't hear that often. It's just like you about to leave in about an hour. So like say Uncle Luke all you want to, like ask me as much. Because definitely don't want to be, like I said earlier, a child should be seen and not heard. Like I don't believe in that. Like I used to still be strict with your kids sometimes, but I just think that's outdated, and that does more harm than good, because some of us take that and we don't know how to deal with that in our older life. So, and because he's like that now, like I would never want to take that away from him, and that happiness that he has and things like that. So,
I love an inquisitive child.
It's cool. And,
mainly because we couldn't be.
Yeah. And I like I said, I'm very jealous of that. Like when I see it, I'm like, why can't I be like that? So now, like, and I'm about to let you go because I'm way past my time. But I wasn't like that. So even now when I'm on a podcast, I will stop somebody sometimes. I'm like, wait a minute, let's go back to this right quick. So it helps me kind of do what I have to do, like being a better, podcast host, trying to get that curiosity going. But it's tough for me to do that because of not asking questions when I was younger, or or just because I say I'm the adult, you the child. And sometimes it's like that, but sometimes as a kid, I think we should understand why the adult in that order. We got to get more. Just because you say I'm the adult and you're the child, like I need to give you more. Like if I had a kid, I would say that, but I have to give you a little bit more context with it.
Yeah.
So because people like, in my mind, all it want is teaching me how to shut down.
Yeah.
In a sense. So
something I've never said as a mom to my children is something that I heard growing up is, I brought you in this world, I'll take you out. I've never said that to my children. Mm-hmm. I have said you're gonna learn today.
You're gonna learn today. You're gonna learn today.
You're gonna learn today. But I never said that to my kids because I didn't have that kind of power over them and put that kind of fear in them. Mm-hmm. And there were things that I did that were just, I didn't know what to do. Nothing that hurt them, but things that I did when I was like, okay, you punished for 2 weeks for this. But now that they're older, especially now that I have 2 that are college graduates and adults, mm-hmm. and my 3rd is on his way to being the same, it's so much easier for me to say, tell me what's going on. What do you think you want to do? Or what do you think you should do? Mm-hmm. How can I help? That's how I parent now. Case in point, a couple weeks ago, my son had like his 3rd, 4th, 5th wreck. I don't know how many. He's not on my insurance. Duran, shout out to you. Called, said he'd been in an accident. My words were, and I was at home dealing with us. Calm down. What's happening? He told me, are you hurt? No, ma'am, I'm fine. Okay. What do you need from me? Do you need me to come? Do you need us to come? Because mm-hmm. Corey was home, and he was like, no, I'm good. He said, my dad's on the way. I was like, good. I said, your father's there? He said, no, he's on his way. I was like, okay, good. What do you need? I don't know what to do. I said, well, here's what you normally need to do, which after like 4 or 5 wrecks, I think he would know, but whatever. I said, do this, do this, do this. Mm-hmm. If that's what you want to do, those are the steps that I would take if I were in your situation. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, call me when things settle down, when you get where you need to be. Can you drive your car? And he was like, probably need to have it towed. I said, well, call me once you settle or if you need a ride. Yeah. Now, that's growth as a parent because the first time he had an accident, I found myself completely in a panic, jumping up, getting in the car, racing to his side. But now I'm just like, okay. That's motherhood supreme right there. Just kind
that's what's up.
I feel like I've raised them enough to where they know what to do. And even if they don't, at least they'll pause and think. And if they have a moment of confusion or they're kind of in a cloud, my clarity is to call them and just say, hey, are we thinking right now? What do we need to do? Mm-hmm. And let them make their own decisions. Because at the end of the day, I've done the very best that I could with what I had during that time. Mm-hmm. I'm at this place where I have to allow them to experience growing as an adult and not have the negative influence that makes them do things that they're going to regret. Because at the end of the day, I go home and because it doesn't affect me, mm-hmm. it's not something I have to live with. I've learned I have to give it to them and let them. Still want them to advocate, still want them to be vocal, still want them to have the accommodation and resources that they need. But that part of motherhood for me is done. I'm just in the very supportive role now, being a mother, and really, really watching fruits of my labor, grow into amazing human beings who I hope and pray will put good into the world. And that's the legacy that I'm hoping to leave.
I like that a lot. Well, on that note, is there anything last kind of talks you want to say before we end this? And by the way, whenever you want to come back on, like I enjoy talking to you. I wish I could talk to you more today, but I'm letting them have their room and people do some work back here soon. So
yeah. So I'll ask you one closing question.
okay,
Pumpkin pie, or sweet potato pie.
sweet potato pie.
All day, every day. And so I knew I loved you. It's Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for this time with you and thankful to know you. Sweet potato pie all day for me.
For sure.